In a gray brick building, a shelter where the cold wind seeps through cracks in the walls and boarded-up windows barely let in any light, sat a small French bulldog with sad eyes. Her first moments in this new unfamiliar world were a true trial. She had come here from a crumbling city where she was once named Daisy, but that name no longer mattered. In that moment she was simply a homeless, lost, and frightened dog. Her gray coat, once shiny and well-kept, was now dirty and matted from living on the streets. The bulldog couldn't understand why she was here. All the people who passed by looked at her with curiosity, and sometimes with pity. But to her they were just shadows, an emptiness from which the cold emanated. With every second her heart beat faster, and her body trembled with fear. She huddled into the corner of her kennel, refusing to look at the people who tried to approach. The sounds around her were terrifying, the barking of other dogs, the whispers of the shelter workers, the screech of metal doors. Every new sound caused her to panic. She withdrew into herself, trying to become invisible, as if hoping that if she didn't move, the horror around her would disappear. In this gray and cold world there was no warmth, no refuge from fear. Only sharp edges and the pungent smell of disinfectant that pressed on her chest. One day when the sun struggled to break through the clouds, casting rare shafts of light that fell upon her, she felt a touch. A young woman with kind eyes and a neat hairstyle stopped at her kennel, feeling the warmth emanating from her. Daisy recoiled even deeper into the corner. The woman held treats in her hand, but in her fear, the dog couldn't appreciate them. It seemed to her that even the kindest intentions could turn into something terrible. A whisper came from behind. "She's very scared. You have to be careful." But how could she be careful when only despair grew in her heart? Each day passed in anticipation of something that wasn't there. One day, she opened her eyes and saw the woman with sparkling eyes trying to open the kennel door. The little dog froze again, not knowing what to do. Why can't I leave? Why am I here? This question tormented her. With each new day, the grayness of the shelter became more hopeless. She didn't understand why she had ended up in this world, and every step toward recovery seemed impossible. But maybe this was all just a temporary trial. In her soul, a small spark of hope still remained, even if she didn't know how to help it. In the evening, when it began to get dark outside, the dog felt someone else approaching her kennel. This time it was a man with a wide smile and kind words. "Hey, little one. It's all going to be okay," he said, but her heart only trembled with fear. A new person, new opportunities, or new trials? These thoughts swirled in her head. The silence around her became deceptive, as if all life outside her kennel had frozen, leaving only her and her fear in this tiny, yet terrifying universe. And only the warm light from the lamp hanging above her gave her hope that somewhere out there, beyond this broken world, there was a place where she would be accepted and could simply be a dog. A few days passed full of vague waiting and despair. Every morning, the bulldog woke up in her kennel, as if time had stopped. She still hid in the corner, avoiding human eyes, rejecting affection and kind words as if they were poison. A storm raged inside her. Fear mixed with despair, and hope died a little more each day. The shelter workers tried to approach her, but each time her defensive reaction became stronger. They brought food, but even for that, she didn't dare to take a step. The gentle hands that tried to pet her only made her want to run away, to hide underground, in a secret corner where no one could reach her. "Why don't they understand that I don't want to socialize?" she thought, hiding her snout under her paws. Every morning began with the same ritual. The first rays of light broke through the window, and the smell of kibble slowly spread throughout the shelter. This smell made Daisy hungry, but to be alone with these feelings was unbearable. The yelps and barks coming from other dogs only intensified her fear. They all socialized, played, had their people, but for her this was unattainable. She was trapped in her own little world of fear and loneliness. While doing her work, one of the volunteers, a woman named Olivia, noticed her behavior. This little one is so scared. Has she never known care and love? She thought, looking at the bulldog but not daring to approach. Olivia understood that if Daisy didn't start to trust people, she wouldn't have a chance at a new, happy life. She decided to simply sit nearby, not moving so the dog would feel safe. And so weeks passed. Olivia came every day, read books, and pretended that nothing was happening. She shared her thoughts with Daisy, told her about life, about how people also have difficult times and that sometimes, all you need is time to recover. Although she didn't show it, the bulldog began to listen little by little. Her fear lessened somewhat, and in the moments when Olivia sat nearby, she would sometimes lift her head to look at her. But the fear still remained. One day, when Olivia tried to slowly reach her hand through the bars to pet her, Daisy stood up and quickly recoiled into the corner. Her heart pounded as if a warrior were inside her. Why are they all so cruel? Why don't they understand that I don't want to socialize? These thoughts came back again and again. Some volunteers began to lose hope. Every day they repeated the same thing. We know she can be a good dog, but she needs time. In these moments, Olivia always replied, "She's just afraid. Let's keep going. She deserves a chance." Once again, as the voices of children playing ball echoed outside the window, Daisy froze. A picture formed in her mind of her romping in a field, of being petted, of being loved. But these dreams were still as distant as an evening star, beautiful but unattainable. Despite all the difficulties, Olivia continued to believe. She knew that patience and understanding were the only way to rebuild trust. She came to the shelter every morning. And over time, if you looked closely, you could notice that Daisy sometimes tried to perk up her ears when she heard Olivia's familiar footsteps. Even if she didn't move, a spark of hope was born inside her, which might one day ignite into a flame of love and friendship. One sunny winter day, when the warmth of the first spring rays broke through the clouds and allowed her to catch the faint scent of melting snow, everything changed. Olivia came again, as always, with a book under her arm and a new batch of treats. This time she had a plan. She decided it was time to move forward, time to start taking small steps toward trust. She sat directly on the floor, putting her book down beside her, letting Daisy see that she had everything she needed for a calm interaction. She began to read aloud, ignoring the dog but still trying to speak softly and gently. The words, like light, radiated from her mouth, and even if they weren't addressed specifically to Daisy, the dog began to pay attention to the sounds, which seemed to carry no danger. At that moment, Daisy lifted her head, and her ears slightly perked up. Olivia, noticing this reaction, continued to read, but added a little more soul to her voice, radiating warmth and kindness. There were still no affectionate words. Trust takes time, but at least she could see that the dog was listening and that things were beginning to shift. With each new word and with each reminder of the spring days when the sun's rays touched her fur, Daisy emerged from her shell more and more. Her heart began to respond, and the fear seemed to gradually recede. Olivia continued to read when she suddenly saw the bulldog slowly and cautiously taking steps toward her. This moment was as if frozen in time. The world around her stood still as Daisy, with trembling paws, came closer. She was like a little breeze that was still afraid of stormy clouds. But even on this path, she took small steps toward Olivia, and her heart, though pounding with fear, began to yield to the desire to understand that this woman was not an enemy. Olivia, barely breathing, began to slowly pull treats from her pocket. But she didn't rush to offer them. She first wanted Daisy to take a step toward them herself. "I'm here, little one, and you're safe," she said. Her voice was soft and soothing. The bulldog slowly and warily approached the bars. Her nose twitched, searching for the scent of the food. And this was the most important moment. Daisy took a step. She finally understood that trust isn't fear, but an opportunity. Olivia slowly extended the treats. In that moment, a true connection was formed between them. Even if it was only for seconds, They were full of life, full of hope. Daisy finally did what she had dreamed of for so long. She allowed herself to trust. In that moment, as she bravely took the treat and held it in her teeth, Olivia could barely hold back tears of joy. It was a step toward a new beginning, a step toward freedom from fear and mistrust. The feeling that filled Olivia's heart was incredible. The first small victory. The first step toward the future. Seeing this small victory, Olivia understood that this was only the beginning. Her little Daisy was no longer just a homeless dog, but one who had a chance to start a new life. She was just waiting for the moment to believe. And Olivia continued to come every day to help her rediscover a world where there would be no more fear and loneliness. Together, they began to create their dreamland, where love and understanding would reign over everything. Time passed, and every day spent with Olivia seemed like a kind fairy tale for Daisy. Each meeting was filled with new sensations, and the trust she had built for so long was now beginning to bear fruit. The little bulldog opened up more and more, and Olivia, watching her changes, became happier with each passing day. At first, she not only stood up on her paws but also ran to the kennel when Olivia came. At first, she only peeked from behind the bars, but then as they continued their trust lessons, Daisy took another, more confident step. She came out of her kennel and sat right in front of Olivia. Her eyes sparkled with anticipation. It was like a small miracle. And in that moment, the bulldog finally understood that she could be not only scared but also active, ready for new discoveries. Olivia, realizing the time had come, decided to give her a name. "You'll be Sunshine," she said. And the bulldog squinted, as if it were not just a word but a whole new life she could grasp. Sunshine, like sunlight that melts ice, like a spring rain that makes flowers bloom. This new name became a symbol of her new life and her new beginning. With each new day, Sunshine became more confident. She loved to lie for hours in the sunlight that streamed through the window and feel the warmth on her fur. Her personality blossomed like a flower pushing through ice. Olivia brought toys, and one day when she decided to start playing, Sunshine happily ran to the ball and felt what fun was for the first time in her life. Barking and laughter filled the space around her, and her fears, like an old fog, dissipated. Something that had once seemed unattainable to her now became part of her life. Friendship, warmth, and happiness. She sought Olivia's attention, and every time she reached out her hand to pet her, Sunshine no longer pulled away. This contact, this patience and tenderness became part of their new life. One day, Olivia brought other volunteers with her to show them how wonderfully Sunshine had changed. The other volunteers looked with admiration at the little bulldog, who now not only ran but also happily played with them. "She's so brave. We just don't recognize her," one of the girls whispered as Sunshine ran up and sniffed their hands, as if trying to understand who these new people in her life were. Each time they laughed and played with her, the little bulldog's eyes shone like bright stars in the night sky. She understood that her fear was receding, and each new step, each new smile, only strengthened her confidence. Soon her ears not only perked up at the sounds around her, but also trembled with joy. When she came to the shelter, Olivia felt sure that with each day, they were becoming closer. Sunshine was becoming not only a dog without a home, but also her loyal friend. Now this was no longer just a story about love and trust, but a true friendship that was just beginning to blossom. Each new word, each new task became exciting and full of hope for the future. They were ready for a new, amazing chapter in their lives. And so, a month after Sunshine first came out of her kennel, Olivia's kindness and the volunteers' patience began to bear fruit. Perhaps the most important thing was what Olivia realized. Now that Sunshine had blossomed, it was time to find her a new home. Her heart swelled with joy and hope that this kind-hearted dog would be happy and loved. Olivia decided to post an announcement on social media to find someone who would be ready to welcome Sunshine into their family. A person who would care for her and give her the love and understanding she had been waiting for so long. Each time Olivia made a new post, she tried to imagine what it would be like to see her in a new home among her family, where everyone would love and care for her. The little bulldog, unaware of the upcoming changes, continued to enjoy life at the shelter. She played with the toys Olivia had given her, and each new day brought her joy and happiness. But in reality, these were only preparatory steps for the changes that awaited her. A few weeks passed, and on a warm evening at the very edge of the city, in a cozy little house with bright flowers on the windowsills, lived a woman named Jane. She had long dreamed of having a dog, and she loved the photos she saw on social media. "Look how amazing she is. I never thought I could melt the heart of such a scared dog," she said to her husband as they considered the possibility of taking Sunshine home. Jane was full of hope and love. She was ready to dedicate her time to making the new dog part of her family. She contacted Olivia, and they arranged to meet at the shelter. Both of their hearts were aflutter with excitement. Jane's heart with anticipation, Olivia's heart with hope that Sunshine would finally find her own home. When Jane arrived at the shelter that day, the atmosphere was filled with a special energy. Jane, with a smile on her face, wore a bright dress to show how happy she was. She walked in with full trust that she would meet her future friend. Olivia met her at the door, and the interview began. They talked about how important it was to be ready for new challenges, and how to care for a dog who had suffered from fear and loneliness. The bright sun was shining outside, and the air smelled of spring as they entered the room where Sunshine was waiting. And then they met. Jane stopped and her heart beat faster. She saw those large, sad eyes that looked at her with distrust at that moment. Olivia seated them in a circle so they could socialize and get to know each other. Sunshine remained wary, but her interest in the new woman gradually grew. Olivia sat nearby and gave instructions on how to interact with the bulldog. But even she understood that it would take time. Jane firmly held treats in her hands and waited patiently for Sunshine to get used to her. This moment was full of anticipation and hope. Sunshine approached cautiously a few times but couldn't bring herself to get closer. But then, gathering her thoughts, she took the first step. She studied Jane, her kind eyes and smile, and then slowly came closer. This connection was so close to what could be a happy beginning. At that moment, the world around them stood still, and Sunshine understood that maybe this was the love she had been missing so much. With each passing second, trust grew. Jane quietly said, "I won't hurt you. I just want to be your mom." These simple words were like a ray of light in a dark tunnel. Sunshine, scared but full of hope, finally decided she could take a step forward. These moments between them passed so quickly. Jane, realizing that her heart was ready for a new life, extended her hand with a treat. And then when Sunshine finally bravely approached, the tasty treat filled her slightly trembling soul. It was a step that changed everything. From that moment, Jane felt their hearts get closer and a promising friendship was already beginning to sprout. With each new visit, Jane came with gifts, soothing words, and affection. And each time they became closer, hope grew stronger each day, and their bond multiplied. Jane couldn't wait to take Sunshine home and make her part of her family. After Jane and Sunshine began to build their first connection, time began to pass differently for them. Each new day was full of adventures and expectations. Jane understood that for a scared dog like Sunshine, every new place and every new action carried a sense of danger. And she was ready to do everything to help her new friend adapt. Jane decided she would come to the shelter regularly to meet with Sunshine and avoid causing her unnecessary stress. Each visit took place in a friendly atmosphere, and gradually, thanks to patience and love, the dog began to open up more and more. The bulldog came to Jane more often, snuggled up to her, and in her gaze you could see a spark of trust. One day when Jane came to the shelter, she decided it was time to make a change. She brought new toys and soft blankets to make the time they spent together cozier. When she entered the room where Sunshine was, her eyes lit up with joy. "Look what I brought," Jane said, showing the bulldog a ball. She knelt down in front of her and threw the toy to the side. Sunshine, at first wary, then with curiosity, went to the ball. It was like a small miracle. The ball bounced across the floor, glowing in the sun's rays, and with each new game, Sunshine began to show her true personality. The moments they played became sacred to them. All fears went away when Jane laughed, encouraged her, and showed her that she was there. These moments, though not easy, turned every instant into a little adventure. Step by step, time brought them closer to a new life where fears and anxieties became less significant, and joy and care took over. Jane, watching how Sunshine was beginning to absorb the new reality, felt that this was just the first step toward their real life. Soon she understood that she wanted to take the bulldog home for the weekend, so she could see how cozy and comfortable a home could be. Olivia, as always, supported her decision, knowing that this would be an important step in Sunshine's therapy. And so the day came when Jane came for Sunshine. She had a nice crate to make the journey more comfortable for the little dog. She gently called her, and when Sunshine approached, they stepped into a new adventure together. The walk to the car was filled with a quiet excitement, and when they arrived at the house, Sunshine's eyes were filled with wonder. She looked at the new space that would now be a part of her world. Jane opened the crate door and, holding her breath, waited for Sunshine to come out. The bulldog took a cautious step, but then, feeling the warmth, she reached toward Jane and realized that this was becoming her new home. She carefully explored every corner, inhaling the sense of domestic comfort, new food, and soft pillows. The sounds of children playing in the neighboring yard seemed distant and foreign to her, but she gradually began to get used to these new melodies. Having overcome her initial jitters, Sunshine peeked out of her crate and soon realized that she was indeed safe here. Jane was nearby, and her kindness became a guiding light for her in this new world. Every step she took was an exploration, and even simple things like a cozy armchair, a fluffy blanket, or a throw on the sofa became part of her little story of overcoming fear. The atmosphere in the house was full of care and love, and gradually, Sunshine began to understand that this new home was not just a place, but a real family. When Jane sat down next to her and began to pet her, a warmth filled Sunshine's heart that she had never felt before. All she had to do was believe in this newfound happiness. Every day was a new page. Jane whispered gentle words to her, and when she smiled, Sunshine felt that every moment was important. Their bond grew stronger, and the fears that had once shrouded her soul began to subside. Together they could create a new story, a new life full of love and trust. The world around Sunshine gradually began to change. She had managed to adapt to her new home, but every day was still a real trial for her. Jane understood that their first day together was full of excitement and adventure. Like any new experience, it could be both poignant and inspiring. The morning came when Sunshine woke up in her new home for the first time. The sun's rays broke through the curtains and gently illuminated the room. She opened her eyes and felt that she was in a cozy, warm environment where no worries could bother her. The bulldog turned her head and saw Jane smiling from behind the door, preparing breakfast. With every minute that stretched like an eternity, Sunshine began to understand that this day would be special. Jane called her, and not knowing what to do, she cautiously got out of her cozy bed and took a few hesitant steps toward her new owner. Jane, noticing her, looked at her with tenderness and said, "Good morning, my sweet girl. Are you ready to explore the world?" In her voice was the same kindness that ignited confidence within Sunshine. The dog, swaying slightly, came closer and understood that she could trust this woman, that she would not harm her. After breakfast, Jane got things ready for a walk. "Today we're going to the park," she said happily, and Sunshine felt her heart beat faster with anticipation. This was so new and exciting. She had never been to places like this before, and now a new adventure awaited her. When Jane began to put on her leash, Sunshine felt a slight nervousness, but she immediately felt her support next to her. She willingly stepped toward the door, ready to explore the world outside her new home. Stepping outside, she saw bright colors, smelled fresh air, and heard sounds that once terrified her. Now it was something different. These were the sounds of life. The street was full of life. People had dogs playing with balls, children laughing and squealing, and even old folks who were leisurely walking through the park. All of it seemed magical to Sunshine, and the feelings that filled her heart were almost indescribable. Every new step was like a celebration. She tried to follow what was happening around her, chasing the leaves that slowly fell from the trees. A new world opened its doors to her, and now she could feel free. Jane held her leash, and that gave her confidence. The walk in the park was full of new discoveries. They met other dogs with whom Sunshine first exchanged wary glances like a puppy, but then they began to play together, and the fears started to recede, giving way to joy and fun. She felt herself becoming more and more self-assured with each passing minute, and life with Jane was filling her with new feelings. Lunch in the park was another miracle. Jane laid out a blanket and offered Sunshine a treat she had prepared in advance. The bulldog gently bit a piece and felt something special fill her soul. She understood that this was not just food, but a manifestation of the care and love that had now become a part of her life. As the sun began to set and a soft light enveloped the park, Jane and Sunshine returned home, tired but happy, with hearts full of new impressions. Finally, night came, and as they lay on the sofa, Jane hugged Sunshine, whispering, "You were just wonderful today. I'm so glad you're mine." In that moment, Sunshine understood that her new beginning was filled with light, kindness, and love. The first day at home remained in her heart as a memory that anything is possible, that the world can be kind, bright, and full of love. This life, full of hope, became a new and amazing path to happiness for her. After the first day at home, a new life began for Sunshine. She smiled, played, and enjoyed every moment spent with Jane. Now they had become a real family, and every morning brought her new impressions and discoveries. But soon it was time to meet another family member, who was also waiting for their turn. Jane had another dog, a cute and playful purebred cocker spaniel named Luna. She was friendly herself and was always ready to embrace new family members. But Jane knew that for Sunshine, meeting Luna would be a trial. She needed time to adapt to her new environment and accept a new friend. That day, Jane brought Luna with her and happily called out to Sunshine, "You're about to meet your new sister." Both dogs had their own personalities, and their first encounter promised to be exciting. Jane hoped that both dogs would become friends and best friends. The sunlight streaming through the window illuminated the room as they began their introduction. The room was filled with a sense of excitement and anticipation. Luna, jumping with joy, quickly initiated contact with Sunshine, sniffing her and wagging her tail as if to say, "Welcome to our family." Sunshine, although still wary, could not help but notice this friendly energy. She felt the same spark of trust that had been growing stronger. "I'm here for you," Luna seemed to whisper as she tried to get closer. An invisible bond between them was beginning to form. And although they were still a long way from full trust, it was already very promising. Jane watched this scene with joy and hope. "You're going to be best friends," she said happily. A little later, when happy sounds filled the room, Luna and Sunshine began to play, as if they understood that every second spent together was a chance to get closer. At first, they slowly ran toward each other, sniffing each other's fur with interest and exploring the smells. Then, as if feeling trust for each other, they began to play, rolling on the floor and making happy noises. It was a joy that filled the space where fears and loneliness had once lived. Jane, watching them, couldn't help but smile. "You are so wonderful." Days passed, and every morning, Sunshine eagerly greeted a new session of games with Luna. Jane created opportunities for their interaction, preparing different toys and even taking them on walks so they could explore the world together. With each new step, their friendship grew stronger. Sunshine was no longer alone. Her new sister was constantly by her side, providing fun adventures and confidence. Together they explored the yard, ran after balls, and simply enjoyed the fresh air. Luna, in turn, became a real support for Sunshine. Sometimes, when one of them felt insecure, the other would come up and comfort her, as if saying, "We're in this together." Jane was amazed at how quickly things were developing. "Soon you will be best friends and my family will be even more complete," she said joyfully. And every time they played or just lay next to each other on the sofa, love and understanding permeated the house. One day, as they were returning from a walk together, Sunshine felt that her life had become bright and full. Her suffering was behind her, and now she was part of a family that gave her happiness and support. This new relationship gave her the opportunity to be happy, and with each new day, she grew stronger. With the arrival of autumn, the world around Sunshine became even more colorful. The green leaves gradually took on golden and red hues, and the air was filled with the scents of fresh fruits and herbs. Sunshine felt nature changing, and with each new day, a spark of joy ignited in her heart. After she finally settled into her new home and became friends with Luna, life became more interesting and eventful. Every day was full of new discoveries. Jane, inspired by their friendship, began to give them toys that lifted their spirits and became part of their daily activities. Every morning, Sunshine and Luna waited for Jane to take new toys out of the box. This became a real ritual, and soon it became their favorite activity. One day, Jane brought a huge ball with bright colors. And the moment she showed it, Sunshine and Luna's eyes lit up with joy. It was a real find. Sunshine, with slight excitement, pressed against the new ball rolling toward her. Jane showed them how to play, how to push it to each other, and it was truly fun. The ball flew across the floor, and the dogs happily chased after it, wagging their tails, sometimes even getting tangled up with each other. But they were happy and playful. Games became a true art for them. They ran, jumped, and laughed, losing track of time. Jane couldn't hold back her smile as she watched them, and her heart was overflowing with happiness. There had never been so much joy in the house as there was now, with both dogs full of energy and cheerfulness. In the evenings, they would gather on the sofa, where Jane would hug both dogs and shower them with affection. This was a true warmth that filled her heart. Each touch became a spark of love and care, and Sunshine understood that she had finally found her family. With the arrival of winter, they walked together in the snowy park, and it was like a magical adventure. Luna, with her restless nature, happily jumped in the snowdrifts, while Sunshine, with a slight slowness, enjoyed every moment. They left their paw prints together on the white ground, and it was like a poem about friendship and love. Every evening when they returned home, Jane prepared dog treats, and Sunshine, knowing what awaited her, dreamed of new adventures the next day. Coming home, they were welcomed into warmth and care, and it was undoubtedly the best thing that could have happened to them. A little time passed and Sunshine, along with Luna, found her place in the family. Now she was no longer just a dog without a home. Now she had become a part of this warm and cozy corner of happiness. Every moment, every word that Jane spoke was full of love, which brought hope and joy to her animals. It was the first step toward a new life, full of happiness and laughter. Several months passed since Sunshine came to her new family. During this time, many changes had occurred. She was no longer a scared dog from the shelter. Now she had become confident, joyful, and loving. Every day was full of fun, games, and warmth. Sunshine had completely accepted her role in the family, and it was an incredible feeling. She and Luna had become inseparable friends who shared joys and sorrows. Every morning they woke up together, wagging their tails happily and lining up, waiting for Jane to prepare breakfast. Even now that she had become part of the family, like everyone else, they continued to rejoice in every day together. With each new day, Sunshine became more and more confident. She learned not only to trust but also to show her love. When Jane came home from work, the bulldog always greeted her happily at the door, trying to express her emotions through cheerful jumps and gentle licks. She was no longer afraid, but only waited to be embraced. One of the most memorable moments in their lives was a trip to a country house. Jane packed all the necessary things and calling Sunshine and Luna, they set off together on a new adventurous journey. When they arrived, a huge yard with green lawns and many trees stretched out before them. It was like a magical world where they could run and play all day long. During this time, they not only explored the yard, but also enjoyed every moment. In the evening, they gathered around a bonfire and Jane, sitting nearby, told them stories filled with kindness and care. Sunshine and Luna listened with interest, rejoicing in each new adventurous moment. This was a true new happy life. When they returned home, Sunshine already knew that her place was here, among loved ones, in an atmosphere of warmth and love, where no one would leave or abandon her. She had accepted her place in the family, and in her heart lived the certainty that everything would be okay. Every evening, Jane covered Sunshine and Luna with a warm blanket, whispering, "I love you, my little ones, my darlings." And in response to these words, happiness blossomed in the dogs' hearts, creating a bright aura of love and well-being. Now, when Sunshine looked at the world around her, she saw not just a gray and gloomy one. She had become a part of this huge, good world, full of bright events and joyful moments. Every new day was like a new page in her book of life, in which she was allowed to be happy and loved. And perhaps this was exactly the happiness she had been searching for so long. Trust, friendship, and love. That's what filled her heart. Now, when she looked to the future, she saw not only herself but also the brilliant prospects of life that awaited her. Sunshine was no longer afraid of losing her family. She had found her place, and this new life was filled with laughter and happiness that, along with auras of hope, lit up every new day.